Welcome, friends. We're going to talk about Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Welcome to my first long form video. I posted a couple on TikTok talking a little bit about this subject already. Chapter 1, we start out in a very weird way, with the Dursleys talking about things like how they are very normal, thank you very much, and nothing weird ever happens. And we get an idea right from the beginning of the book that they are not good people. Because they're like, the first sentence is Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal, thank you very much. They loved Dudley so much that from the day he was born, they spoiled him with candy and junk food and overfed him and overindulged him with birthday presents and all that fun stuff. And honestly, I think the fact that they overindulged Dudley the way they did is really neglectful parenting, because good parents would have set boundaries for him and told him no. So their behavior in the first year of his life can totally predict the way they're going to treat Harry and the way that they're going to continue to treat Dudley. And it's very obvious from, everything they say and do to him, even when he's just a baby. They talk about their neighbors and they gossip a lot about what's going on around them. In chapter 1, we get a little chat where we see Mrs. Dursley poking her neck out the window like, what's going on with the neighbors? And they're talking about her skinny little neck and her husband Vernon's big fat chubby neck, because of course we have to mention the fact that she's really bone thin and her husband is a big chubby dude with no neck. Like, he's so fat he has no neck, because apparently that's how it is with all fat people. We get to see a lot about how oblivious they are too, because in chapter 1, all the owls are flying around everywhere. They're all over Little Whinging, all over Surrey, all over England, London, probably down in Wales and Scotland, all over the United Kingdom, everywhere. And we know why. But Vernon is just like, I'm going to work. He saw McGonagall, the cat, reading the street sign, which of course she was reading it and she was watching them all day long. Saw Vernon leave for work, saw Petunia taking care of Dudley at home. And then he gets to work and he forgets about the owls, because the only thing that matters is him and his job once he's at work, which, fine, but, just owls are right out of his head. Then he goes outside and somebody hugs him and they're like, even a muggle like you should be celebrating on a day like this. And he's like, what the fork? Like, celebrating what? What's going on? And they're like wearing robes and they have their hats on. They don't care that they are in a muggle, non-magical city. They're just going nuts. And Vernon is like, what? Like, why are these people touching me? Why are they hugging me? Then we hear magical name of all magical names, Harry. But of course, Vernon just assumes, oh no, this can't be that. That can't be it. Nope. Walk away. It's not him. So he gets home. They're watching the news, relaxing, and he's like, oh, say, what was the name of your sister's baby? Henry, right? No, it was Harry. Dead common name if you ask me. Because, Vernon is not a common name at all. Anyway, gotta do something to make them seem like they're better than those dead common people. Then, uh, they they figure out his name and realize, yeah, something's probably going on with him. But they try to just brush it off. They pretend, they ignore, they go to bed. And then we get a little scene at the end of the chapter with Dumbledore and McGonagall. Dumbledore comes along with his put outer that he invented, puts out all the lights, and swears to McGonagall, the cat, after he tells her, I should have known it was you. She turns back into her human self. And then he just says, oh yeah, I have Hagrid bringing Harry here. I trust him with my life. And what does he do? He sticks a 1-year-old baby in the sidecar of a janky motorcycle he got from Sirius Black, which, okay, whatever. I mean, you got the baby there. He's still alive. Hagrid is pretty, ditzy and irresponsible, to be honest. So, Dumbledore's talking to Professor McGonagall before they get there, and she's like, why are you leaving him with these people? They're terrible, they're horrible. And he's like, well, they're his family. Because we all know family is always great, right? They never end up treating people badly who are also in their family. And family members would never abuse each other or talk negatively about each other or do bad things to each other. And then they start talking about the powers that Voldemort had. And Professor McGonagall says, you could have taken him on. You could have defeated him yourself. You have the same kind of powers he had. And Dumbledore says, oh, you flatter me. Voldemort had powers I will never have. And McGonagall says, only because you're too, well, noble to use them. And I want to say, where are we getting the idea that Professor Dumbledore is a noble man? Because that would have to mean that he would leave Harry with people who are actually going to effectively take care of him. That would mean that he would have to find an actual valid reason to trust Hagrid, and not just because he's known Hagrid since Hagrid was a kid. Like, give me a valid reason why you trust this man. To be noble, you would have to be good enough to not do the things to Harry that you do even from the beginning of book 1. Leaving a literal baby with a family that we know is rotten to the very core is not a noble act. They ended up abusing him from the first day he got there, making him sleep in a cupboard under the stairs for the first 11 years of his life because they didn't care about him. And they gave him outsized clothes. They gave him things that used to belong to Dudley, and they were just like, oh, we don't really care about this baby. Give him some old plastic toys and a pair of baggy pants that don't even fit him. And that wasn't even all of it. We'll get into a lot of this, but they were very verbally abusive to him and emotionally manipulative. And they gave their darling little Dudley an entire bedroom filled with toys and a separate bedroom for sleeping in. Like, you have a 3-bedroom house and you're making your nephew, whose parents died, sleep in a cupboard under the stairs. And it sits so wrong. Then we look at, the relationship between Petunia and Lily. I think there was so much jealousy just eating that woman alive. And she genuinely just couldn't handle it when her sister got accepted to Hogwarts and she was a witch, because Petunia was sitting there thinking, well, what about me? I want to go to a magical school. I don't want to be a muggle. I want to be a witch. And I just have a feeling that led her to also treat Petunia pretty badly while they were growing up. And it's weird that she'd even be willing to take on Harry. I know there's things to come. Bear with me, but it just, when you're looking at it just from the very first book, it seems intriguing that she would be like, oh yeah, they left a baby on our doorstep with a letter. We'll take care of him, but not actually take care of him, And I also started wondering, when Petunia found out that Lily and James were dead, did she even think about attending Lily's funeral? Did she think about doing anything? I mean, was she sad at all about the fact that her sister died, or was it all just envy and jealousy because Lily got to be a witch and Petunia was a muggle and had to stay in the muggle world? If you do a deep character analysis of her and really look at her, I mean, she just was so petty and so jealous. And I believe a lot of that is why she treated Harry the way he did, because they had options to tell Harry what actually happened to his parents. Like when he saw all of the green flashes of light in his nightmares, that was the leftover of the Avada Kedavra spell, the death spell that killed his mom and dad. And he had memories of terrible things happening that were just kind of like those core memories that he didn't really know he didn't realize that they were memories per se. He just had the flash of light. He had the scream in his head. He knew something bad had happened, but they told him it was a car accident. Like, it's just, there's so much to unpack with her attitude. But chapter 1 gives us a really clever insight into how their personalities are going to be throughout the book and throughout the entire series, because honestly, even after every little thing happens, their personalities do not change. It's like they start right here and they stay there through the entire book. They get over here, like right to where this J is on my joy sign, and they just sit there, and like that's their whole personality the entire series. And it's just wild to me that they don't change at all. I also think, as far as Dumbledore and Voldemort go, I'm not sure, based on what we learn about Voldemort, that Dumbledore was the only thing he was scared of. I think he had a lot of deep-seated insecurities, possibly from being an orphan, possibly from being a wizard stuck in an orphanage for the first, 11 years of his life, which was beyond his control. He couldn't help it that he ended up in that situation. He did obviously make some choices once he started living a better life at Hogwarts that were very, sinister. I mean, I think, but I don't believe that he was that Dumbledore was the only thing Voldemort was really afraid of. He might have been afraid of Dumbledore's power because he knew that Dumbledore was a powerful wizard, which is interesting, because I could argue that there are other wizards who could be better than Dumbledore simply based on their wholesomeness and their ability to actually do the right thing. One thing that I talked about in another video is how Dumbledore brings Harry to the Dursleys. Hagrid gets him there, and Dumbledore writes the letter, explains what's going on, and says, hey, you're going to take care of your nephew. Congratulations. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. You guys celebrate Kwanzaa? Probably not, but, you get the idea. Here's a baby. Here's a baby for you. And then he just sets Harry up his entire life to be bait for Voldemort. It's literally every single step Dumbledore takes is about setting Harry up to be bait for Voldemort. Every single step he takes. And it's very, very frustrating. I'm going to write a lot of notes about that one theory about him using Harry as bait for Dumbledore, but I wanted to take a little baby step into chapter 1. I've read the first 3 books in this series like 10 times each, because I started the series when book 4 was about to be published, and it is what it is. But I think as we get deeper into everything, we'll see where the Dursleys show a lot of things that reinforce what we see in chapter 1, where they're like spoiling Dudley. We'll see everything that sort of reinforces how Dumbledore treats Harry throughout the series and the way he uses Harry, and a lot of things about why Hagrid is probably not the best gamekeeper, probably not the best teacher to have at the school, and a lot about how J.K. Rowling's personal beliefs do play a bit into these books. Some examples are her description of Rita Skeeter coming up in book 4, where she talks about Rita Skeeter's big, mannish hands and how Rita brought Harry into a little closet to sit there like she wanted to take advantage of him. And that sort of weaves into how, J.K. Rowling's a transphobic bee with an itch. I don't want to really, I'm trying to get my little YouTube channel to take off a bit more, so I'm not going to swear because I know YouTube gets really weird about things that you say sometimes, and so does TikTok. But, we know how J.K. Rowling is. We've watched her blather on about how much she hates trans women for years, and the way she describes Rita Skeeter is very much a mirror of how she feels about trans women in her real life. And that I will explore more, but we got a chance to dip our toes into chapter 1 and see a little bit of the beginning of how they spoil Duddykins, what did they call him, Diddykins or something later in the series, and we get to see the beginning of Voldemort, Voldemort's death and subsequent resurrection or come back to life, and Dumbledore's treatment of Harry by leaving him with people who were obviously not suitable guardians for him. Like a garden gnome could have taken a better care of that baby. So I hope that you'll join me as I dive more into these books and talk more about some of the thoughts I have and the concerns that I have about the author, because there are many. You can also follow me on TikTok, where I do shorter videos. Sometimes they're like 10 minutes long, but a lot of them are shorter than that. So with that, join me on my journey through Harry Potter land, and have a great evening.